There has been a methodology that has been badging around within the corporate spaces, well, at least within the public sector, and that is change management. Change management is a beautiful process if you understand it. And it's not just a process, it's an understanding of how you can adopt a shift in direction towards an organization based on services, products, and people. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what change management is and really highlighting a structure for you to understand the scope of change management. So effectively, change management is managing, ushering, facilitating the change, transformation, or shift of a service, product, or people over time. And it requires a few key things in order for that to happen. So again, for those of you who are familiar with program management and project management, there is a very high level basic methodology that is used in order to complete the end-to-end process of getting the outcomes and outputs and deliverables that are required. And so that process is identify, plan, deliver, and embed. And again, change management uses the same thing. Now, what underpins the process within the change management scope is these two other sort of spheres. And that is stakeholder management and engagement, in addition to managing people. And that's why I love this sort of methodology so much, because it talks to more of the dynamism and how people act and behave when it comes to change, just in general, actually. And so I'm going to talk about these three different spheres. So, the first sphere being the high level structure, the second sphere being the stakeholder management and engagement, and the third sphere being the people change or the people management. So when it comes to the first sphere, we're talking about identify, plan, deliver, and embed. When we look at identify first, really we're trying to identify why we need the change. What is the change, that needs to be made? And with this, we may have our strategy, our vision, certain drivers that are pushing this change. In addition to that, you need to really identify who are the key sort of like people that are responsible for this change. Who will it be affecting? In addition to that, there's also this idea of understanding the organizational culture when it comes to this change, as well as what different change models can be adopted or understood in order to make sure that that change is effective. So really, identification comes down to understanding, scoping, and laying out the land when it comes to, really identifying what change is required before you get to the planning stage. Now, when it comes to planning, when it comes to change management, this is really about determining the key steps that are required to embed this change. Okay. So this is looking at the impact assessment. This is looking at your readiness. This is looking at any sort of like end-to-end plans that are required. Okay. So if you're within a project or program management, environment, you may be doing things like a project charter or some sort of project plan. Okay. Maybe you're scoping out the budget. You're looking at the team. So there must be some sort of workforce planning. Okay. Or resource planning. What sort of teams and networks are required in order to manage the change effectively? Because when it comes to change management, you have to be able to speak with people on a regular cadence, okay? Not in a robotic way, but in an emotionally intelligent way as well. So this is what it comes down to when it comes to planning. If you want to see more about how a program is sort of like set up or projects, etc., then just be sure to check out my video that I did last week on all of these different concepts. The third thing comes down to delivery. Okay. So this is really focusing on the teams that will be delivering these changes. Okay. Now, if you remember within the program management space, you have project professionals, but you also have business change managers or change managers who usually are SMEs or people who work within the surface. Okay. So they work together, the operations and the project program people work together to initiate some level of change. Okay. But when it comes to delivery, there are specific people who will be doing these different things. These people could be suppliers, they could be providers, they could be project support staff specifically, they could be change agents, okay? This is a key sort of like role when it comes to not really initiating change, but working with people to affect change or influence change. This also comes down to users who are actually using these different products and services and who understand these services really well. And so it's working with those different people. Like I said before, it's working with change networks as well. Okay. These are usually ones that you may be setting up, people within your team are setting up. Okay. If you're within that change space. So delivery comes down to getting stuff done. Okay. And as a project manager, you may be managing the delivery through rate management, through governance, through making sure that you sit down with these different teams to understand, what's actually happening. So progress reports as well. All of these different things contribute to supporting delivery. And the final thing is making sure that that change is embedded. So this is looking at lessons learned. This is reinforcing the change. This is also making sure that things are in the right place based on the plan. This is speaking to users and gaining feedback, okay? Now I say that if there is enough pain, okay, to dissatisfy a user, then change will come about. And effectively, that's what we're talking about. So that's the first sphere when it comes to looking at change from a process-driven standpoint. The second bit is around stakeholder engagement and communications. And this is really understanding how to really work with stakeholders and communicate the right level of information to inform the right people. Okay. So when it comes to stakeholders, you'll get different types. There's a great model called CPIG. So this stands for customers, providers, influencers, and governors. I think it stands for that at least anyway. And if I'm wrong, well, I'm sure there'll be a message that pops up. Now that's a great way to categorize the different types of stakeholders you'll be engaging with. And so they require different types of level of engagement. Some will require one-to-one conversations. Others will require meetings. Some people may require some sort of email blast or an update on a social media site. Whatever it may be, you need to be able to identify specifically what these different types of stakeholders require when it comes to being communicated on these different things. Again, a RACI is a perfect example when it comes to highlighting responsibilities, accountabilities, who needs to be consulted, okay, and sometimes those who are consulted are involved in the change in terms of delivering it, and who needs to be informed. These are people who are usually affected by the change, okay? So these may be the customers, so to speak. And so these are all different things that you could use. Now, this is where a good communication plan, okay, is really important, as well as a good communication strategy. Now, what's the difference between the two? A strategy being the thing where you focus on the approach, okay? It focuses on the why and the how, a lot of stuff that Simon Sinek talks about. When it comes to the plan, you're focusing on the what. Now, the person who taught me this stuff within the change management space always refer to this idea of 4 bums on the bench, okay? So you got these W's that act as the bottoms and the bench being the how, okay? So you got what, when, who, and I wouldn't say why, it would be something else. And if it pops up, again, it's on the screen, and the H being the how. And so with that in mind, that gives you a good framework in terms of the difference between a plan and a strategy, especially when it comes to communication. So having this stuff is really important. The strategy is important at the beginning, so you know how to direct the change. The planning is good in terms of knowing exactly what needs to be done. Think of it as a fat to-do list with, key information on there in terms of who needs to do what, when it needs to be done, etc., etc. So those are the key things when it comes to the stakeholder engagement and communication planning as well. The final thing to think about is managing people or people management. And this side of things really comes down to the psychology, the behavior, the coaching, the leadership of the individual to the individuals when it comes to change management. So you're looking at things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So understanding what motivates people, intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, understanding habit formation, looking at compatibility, and also things like Myers-Briggs and looking at different relationships. Also looking at Daniel H. Pink's model when it comes to drive, okay, and motivation, where he talks about how you have to have a sense of purpose and autonomy and a sense of mastery. All really important things when it comes to motivation. So how does that apply to these people who you need to motivate? Understanding, people like Carl Rogers and what he was talking about in terms of, unconditional regard and all of these different aspects. Really understanding the 7 stages of change, okay, where sometimes we may be in denial and we may even be angry at the fact that there's change, but also understanding that if you're ushered through a process, then you'll eventually accept this change and move through it. Knowing the Lewin model, okay, the change Lewin model, okay, where he talks about this whole idea of freezing and unfreezing, okay. There's also this whole idea of how do people react to changes in terms of innovative people, the adopters, the late bloomers, so to speak, or laggards, as they say. I don't think that's acceptable these days. But again, these are all just different frameworks and things thrown at you to understand that there's a whole psychology around how to understand people when it comes to managing change. And change management as a package does a great job to really enforce this idea. So before I continue, I'd love to know, what was the key point that you took from this video? What was the most important thing that you took from the idea of change management? Make sure you comment below. Now, when it comes to change management, I see it as the flesh to the bones of, let's say, for example, a program management qualification or a project management qualification, such as MSP, Prince2, Agile, and all these different things. And it works in complement with these different things, okay? Now, the complementarity of that means that, having a formal sort of end-to-end process style qualification is good, coupled with a change management qualification as well. So for those of you who are interested in change management, again, I'm not endorsed by any of these people. I did mine via QA Limited, via APMG. It was a fantastic course. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was only for a week, and it really gave me the context in terms of what I needed to do going forward as a senior implementation manager for the digital health services. I think this was back 2 or 3 years ago. So again, if you're interested, you can check it out. You can also type in YouTube, Michael Tabradi, APMG interview. You can see my conversations on change management as well. Anyway, if you like more videos like this, tailored around professional and personal development, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, if you're interested in leveling up in terms of your high performance, your professional and personal development, make sure you check the links in the description below, where I have a free event or webinar that I did, where you can check it out and really understand these 7 key principles to adopting a high performance lifestyle. Anyway, take care, God bless, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.